Dear students, this class will be about autocoids and antihistaminics. So in this discussion, we will see few important points about autocoids, and the major topic for the discussion is about antihistaminics agent and the objectives of this class. At the end of this class, students should learn definition of autocoids, classification, mechanism of action, uses, adverse effects, and contraindications of antihistaminics agent. Coming to autocoids, these agents are diverse biological substances produced by a wide variety of cells in our body. All these have intense biological activities. They may be involved in physiological or in pathological process, or some may serve as neurotransmitters in the CNS. Most of these agents act locally, that's why they are known as local hormones. Depending upon the chemical nature, autocoids are divided into three major classes: amine autocoids, lipid derived agents, and peptide autocoids. So the histamines and serotonin are the most important amine autocoids. Lipid derived agents are prostaglandins, leukotrienes, platelet activating factor, and the peptide autocoids includes bradykinin and angiotensin. We will see about each agents and the drugs modulates each autocoids in the respective chapters, but in today's class or today's discussion we will see mainly about histamine and certain drugs which opposes the action of this histamine. Moving on to histamine, as I already said, histamine is an amine autocoid. Histamine is hydrophilic molecule with imidazole ring and amino group. This histamine is produced from histidine by decarboxylation. Histamine is present both in mast cells as well as in other cells, but the major proportion of histamine is present in the storage granules of mast cells. The tissues which are rich in histamine are skin, gastric mucosa, intestinal mucosa, lungs, liver, and placenta. And the tissues which contains non-mast cell histamines are brain, epidermis, and gastric mucosa. Histamine exerts its biological activities through histamine receptors. There are 4 receptors, H1, 2, 3 and 4, but for us H1 and H2 are the most significant receptors. All are G protein coupled receptors. Coming to H1 receptor, in this slide we can see the different location and the effects mediated through this H1 receptor at different sites. So in the extravascular smooth muscles, for example intestine, airway, and in uterus, this H1 mediates contraction. In blood vessels, if the H1 is in endothelium, it produces vasodilatation and increased capillary permeability, and in the vascular smooth muscle, H1 mediates vasoconstriction. And there will be stimulation both in afferent nerve endings as well as in the ganglionic nerves, and it helps in the release of catecholamines from the adrenal medulla. Next is H2 receptor. H2 receptors are located in gastric glands, vascular smooth muscles, heart, and as well as in the rat uterus. So in gastric glands, it increases the gastric acid production, and there will be dilatation of vascular smooth muscles. In the cardiovascular system, it increases the heart rate and force of contraction, and in rat uterus there will be relaxation. The major location for H3 receptor is in the brain. There it acts as a presynaptic autoreceptor which inhibits the release of histamine from the cells. This H3 is also found out from lungs, spleen, skin as well as in the gastric mucosa. The same function is exhibited there. It inhibits histamine release. And the H4 receptor, it is mainly seen in the hematopoietic cells like eosinophils, monocytes, mast cells as well as in basophils. Their main role is in the chemotaxis of these cells. For us in clinical practice, the most significant receptors are H1 and H2. Coming to the pharmacological actions of histamine, first the effects on blood vessels. In blood vessels, histamine mainly produces vasodilatation as well as increase in the vascular permeability. The vasodilatation mainly seen in small blood vessels like arterioles, venules as well as on capillaries. And this vasodilatation is mediated by both H1 and H2 receptors. The H1 mediated vasodilatation is mainly takes place with the help of uh, release of endothelium dependent relaxing factor or nitrous oxide, and there will be increase in the cyclic GMP because this H1 is mainly in the endothelial cells. And the H1 mediated vasodilatation usually it's rapid as well as short lasting. And the H2 is mainly seen in the vascular smooth muscles, so it mediates the vasodilatation mainly by increasing the cyclic AMP, and the vasodilatation is slow and persistent. There will be increased vascular permeability. This increase in the vascular permeability is because of the widening of gap junctions. There is leakage of plasma proteins as well as fluid, which leads to edema formation. Intradermal injection of histamine leads to an effect known as triple response, which is characterized by red reaction or red spot, wheal as well as flare. The red reaction results from the dilatation of capillaries. Wheal is due to the exudation of fluid from the capillaries and venules, and the flare which is due to the dilatation of arterioles in the surrounding area. In heart, histamine increases both heart rate as well as force of contraction. H2 is the receptor mediating these responses. And in the extravascular smooth muscle, the major response is constriction or contraction. For example, in bronchial smooth muscles, histamine produces bronchoconstriction. At higher doses, histamine produces contraction in the intestinal smooth muscle. But the human uterus is not that much sensitive to histamine. And in the glands, histamine mainly increases the secretions from the glands, for example gastric secretions through the H2 receptors. So any drugs which inhibits this H2 receptor can decreases the gastric acid production, so which is useful in peptic ulcer disease. We will discuss in detail about these agents in the GIT. Histamine mediated stimulation of the sensory nerve endings leads to itching as well as pain. Histamine stimulates autonomic ganglia as well as adrenal medulla, which results in the release of adrenaline. So there will be rise in BP following this release. And in the CNS, histamine has several roles like regulation of the sleep-wake cycle, motor coordination, and maintaining the body temperature as well as inhibition of the appetite. Histamine do not have any therapeutic use nowadays, and in the past it was used to test the acid secretion in the stomach, hypersensitivity of bronchial smooth muscles, and also in the diagnosis of pheochromocytoma. Now a histamine analog is used in clinical practice. For example, its name is beta histine. It's a H1 analog which is orally active agent, which mainly used for the management of vertigo in Meniere's disease. Meniere's disease is characterized by tinnitus and vertigo. Before discussing about antihistaminics, we shall see certain conditions or drugs which leads to the release of histamine. So in tissue damages following trauma or following sting by wasp or bee, there will be administration of their venoms, and all these situations leads to release of histamine. Certain drugs like D-tubercularine, morphine, atropine, polymyxin B, vancomycin, or certain polymers like dextran, polyvinyl pyrrolidine, all these things leads to the release of histamine. So the following the release of histamine, there will be hypotension and chances of allergic reactions or anaphylaxis. So in all these conditions or for following the administration of these drugs, we should be careful because there is chances of hypotension as well as allergic manifestations. We will discuss in detail about each of these drugs in their relevant chapters. Moving on to antihistaminics, which is the major topic for this discussion. Antihistaminics are the agents which opposes the action of histamine by antagonizing the histamine receptors. In the clinical practice, we have two types of antihistaminics: H1 antihistaminics or H2 antagonist. In this discussion we will see mainly about the H1 receptor antagonist. We will see a few points about H2 antagonist towards the end of this discussion, and the major discussion about H2 antagonist will be in the gastrointestinal system. H1 antagonist is broadly classified into first generation compounds as well as second generation compounds. First generation compounds are found out in 1930s, and the second generation compounds were found out in 1980s, and these agents are competitive blockers of the H1 receptor. The first generation antihistaminics are divided on the basis of their sedative potency into highly sedative, moderately sedative as well as least sedative agents, and the important members in this first generation includes diphenhydramine, dimenhydrinate, promethazine, hydroxyzine, cinnarizine, cyproheptadine, pheniramin, then clemastine and chlorpheniramine. The main second generation antihistaminics are cetirizine, levocetirizine, loratadine, desloratadine, rupatadine, olapatadine, mesolastine and ebastine. On comparing to first generation compounds, these have less sedating ability. Next is the pharmacological actions exhibited by antihistaminics agent. In smooth muscles, they produces dilatation or relaxation, so which results in dilatation of bronchial muscles, a relaxation of intestinal and other smooth muscles. They blocks the H1 mediated fall in BP, and in case of capillary permeability, they strongly opposes the increase in vascular permeability by the histamine. Antihistaminic agents have good anti-allergic action, so we can use this agent effectively for preventing as well as alleviating the manifestations of allergic reactions. For example, these antihistamines are effective in the management of allergic rhinitis or allergic conjunctivitis, and we can also use these agents in the control of urticaria, itching or angioedema. And the next action is a local anesthetic or membrane stabilizing actions. Certain agents like promethazine, pheniramin and diphenhydramine, they have good local anesthetic action, but these agents are not used clinically as a local anesthetic agents, because when they are administered subcutaneously they produce irritation. And in addition to that, we have good local anesthetic agents like lignocaine, bupivacaine, etc. So we are not preferring these antihistaminic agents as local anesthetic agents. Then effects on nervous system. Among the antihistaminic drugs, the first generation or the conventional antihistaminics, they have the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier and produce certain CNS effects, and they leads to sedation and motor incoordination. So the first generation compounds are not preferred in those people who require constant attention, for example drivers. But this effect is not that much marked in second generation compounds. And there is an additional property for a antihistaminic drug like cyproheptadine, which is an appetite stimulant. In addition to the antihistaminic property, certain agents exhibit anticholinergic property. That means they block the muscarinic receptors of acetylcholine. So these agents have additional anticholinergic side effects. This property is exhibited by mainly the first generation or the conventional antihistaminic drugs. This table shows the drugs which show the anticholinergic property and are classified on the basis of their potency. There is high potent agent, those with low ability to inhibit the cholinergic receptors, and there are certain agents which have minimal or absent action on cholinergic receptors. The first generation compounds are well absorbed following oral as well as parenteral administration, but the most common route of administration is oral. They are widely distributed in the body and even cross the blood-brain barrier to enter into the brain. These agents are metabolized in the liver with the help of microsomal enzymes like cytochrome P3A4, and the peak plasma concentration achieved within 1 to 3 hours. And the prominent adverse effects associated with the use of antihistaminics are CNS effects as well as anticholinergic effects. These effects are mainly exhibited by the first generation compounds. Coming to the CNS effects, sedation is the most prominent adverse effect, and there will be diminished alertness and concentration, motor incoordination, as well as tendency to fall asleep easily. The anticholinergic side effects include dry mouth, altered bowel movement, urinary retention, blurring of vision, etc. Now we will see few important first generation compound. Chlorpheniramine is the first agent. It is a mild sedative agent as well as it has low anticholinergic action. Because of its mild sedative action, we can use this agent even in the daytime, and it is administered in a dose of 2 to 4 milligram per day. Next is hydroxyzine. It's a long acting agent. Because of its good antipruritic property, it can be safely used in skin allergies. This agent is associated with CNS side effects due to its depressant activity on CNS. We can administer this drug through both oral as well as IM routes. Promethazine has prominent sedative property as well as high anticholinergic property. So its use is associated with CNS side effects as well as anticholinergic side effects. We prefer this agent mainly for motion sickness, Parkinsonism, as well as in the pre-anesthetic medication. Then about cinnarizine. It is a moderately sedative agent. It has additional anticholinergic as well as anti-5-hydroxytryptaminergic action. It blocks the sensory signals from vestibular nucleus and decreases the influx of calcium from endolymph. These two properties makes this agent suitable for the management of vertigo in Meniere's disease. Coming to second generation antihistaminics, these compounds are marketed only after 1980s. There are certain significant differences between this generation and the first generation. The second generation compounds are more selective on the peripheral H1 receptors, so they do not have anticholinergic side effects or sedation, even though certain compounds have sedation, but it is less as compared to first generation. And the second generation compounds have additional anti-allergic mechanisms. Usually these compounds possess antihistaminic property. The second generation compounds also have the antihistaminic property. Along with that, it also blocks the release and activation of certain other mediators, for example leukotrienes, platelet activating factors, and cytokines. Terfenadine was the first second generation compound. Actually, this drug is withdrawn from the market due to its cardiac side effects. It has a rapid onset of action and it produces an active metabolite in the body. The problem is it blocks the delayed rectifier potassium channels in the heart, so which leads to polymorphic ventricular tachycardia and which may result in death of the patient. This drug is metabolized by cytochrome P3A4. So if you use this drug along with certain enzyme inhibitors, for example cimetidine or erythromycin, these drugs cimetidine or erythromycin, which inhibits the metabolism of terfenadine accumulate in the body, which leads to its toxicity, and toxicity may be this polymorphic ventricular tachycardia and death of the patient. So because of this cardiac toxicity, the drug is withdrawn from the market. Fexofenadine is the active metabolite of terfenadine. We are still using this fexofenadine because this agent does not have the cardiac toxic potential of terfenadine. It does not block the potassium channels in the heart. There is no polymorphic ventricular tachycardia or no QT prolongation. This fexofenadine does not cross blood-brain barrier, so the CNS side effects are not seen, and it has a half-life of around 11 to 16 hours. We mainly use this fexofenadine for the purpose of allergic rhinitis and urticaria. Astimizole is another second generation antihistaminic. This agent also produces ventricular tachycardia, which is similar to that of terfenadine, and this is also withdrawn from the market. Loratadine is a long-acting peripheral H1 antagonist which is devoid of CNS effect. It has a long T-half of around 17 hours. It produces an active metabolite desloratadine. Desloratadine is also used in the clinical practice as an antihistaminic drug, and this drug is devoid of cardiac toxic potential. Next agent is cetirizine. It is one of the commonest antihistaminic used in the clinical practice. It has affinity for the peripheral H1 receptors, but this agent produces a mild sedation with its use. Cetirizine has additional mast cell stabilizing property, so it prevents the release of cytotoxic intermediates from the mast cell. This drug is not metabolized in the body and is excreted through urine, and this cetirizine attains higher concentrations in the skin. We prefer this agent for upper respiratory allergies, urticaria, atopic dermatitis, and as an adjuvant in seasonal asthma. Levocetirizine is an active enantiomer of the cetirizine. It has less sedation and is active at even at the half doses of cetirizine. Acylastine is a newer H1 blocker having good topical activity and additional mast cell stabilizing property. It's a long-acting drug having a T-half of 24 hours. This drug is metabolized by cytochrome P3A4. We administer this acylastine through oral route as well as through the intranasal route, and it produces certain adverse effects like stinging sensation in the nose, altered taste perception, and there are certain reports of weight gain following its oral use are reported. Avastin is a newer second generation H1 antagonist drug. This is also a non-sedating compound. It is rapidly converted into an active metabolite, carbastin, with a half-life of around 10 to 16 hours. Animal studies found out that its use is associated with QT prolongation, but we don't have much human data on its safety profile. Rupatadine is the newer H1 antihistaminic with additional platelet activating factor antagonism. It is indicated for allergic rhinitis. Coming to the therapeutic uses of antihistaminic drugs, the first one is in allergic conditions. All the component of allergic manifestations can be cured by antihistaminic drugs. For example, itching, urticaria, allergic conjunctivitis, and angioedema. In common cold, these antihistaminics, they do not alter the course of condition, but they provide symptomatic relief due to their anticholinergic and sedative properties. So because of that, the first generation compounds are more effective in common cold. The promethazine, dimenhydrinate, and diphenhydramine are useful in motion sickness. You should take this drug at least 1 hour before the journey. Promethazine is also useful in morning sickness in pregnancy. In conditions like vertigo associated with Meniere's disease, cinnarizine is useful. Because of the anticholinergic and sedative properties, promethazine is useful in pre-anesthetic medication. Chlorpheniramine and diphenhydramine, they are useful in the management of cough. Actually, these agents do not have any cough suppressant action, but they provide symptomatic benefits. The anticholinergic property of promethazine is useful in the management of acute muscle dystonia as well as in Parkinsonism. That's all about H1 antihistaminics. Now we will see a few points about H2 antagonist. The first H2 blocker was burimamide. It was found by Sir James Black in 1972. The H2 receptor mainly located in the parietal cells in the stomach. So the stimulation of H2 receptor increases the gastric acid production. So the antagonist of H2 receptor, which leads to decrease in the production of gastric acid. So we have certain clinically useful H2 blockers are cimetidine, ranitidine, famotidine, and roxatidine. And the uses of this H2 antagonists are peptic ulcer, gastroesophageal reflux disease, gastric hypersecretory state, stress ulcer, Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, etc. And we will discuss in detail about these H2 blockers in the gastrointestinal system. And that finishes our discussion about histamine and H1 antihistaminics. Thank you.